Hi there, Sherry Schreiber of GettingBetter.com with some naked truth for you today. Some of you out there are engaged in more than one therapeutic process. In other words, you're seeing more than one therapist simultaneously. Please understand this hurts you. This does not help you. And I had an incident occur very recently that reminded me of this issue, and I wanted to talk with you about it because it's important that you understand what you're doing to yourself. It's actually emotionally undermining to you and injurious to you to see more than one therapist at a time. And as far as they're concerned, it's unethical practice on their part. It is. It's unethical practice to take someone on who's already in treatment with another. So consider who you're seeing for help. And if they're engaging in this kind of practice and pandering to your need to jam in as much information and insight and help as you possibly can, they're allowing you not only to hurt yourself by this, riding two horses at the same time, but it's unethical on their part to work with you therapeutically if you're already in treatment. I never would do this with people who called me for help. Oh yeah, my therapist is great and I love her, or I love this guy, he's great. And I'd say, well, why the fuck are you calling me then? In other words, if you're getting what you need there, why are you calling me? Let me give you a mental picture of what you're doing to yourself if you're seeing more than one therapist at a time. Let's say you're riding two horses. You're standing on the back of two horses. You've got one foot on one horse, planted squarely on their back, and you've got the other foot planted squarely on the other horse, and you're holding the reins of both horses in your hands, and you're galloping along. These two horses are galloping along. You're standing on their back, and for a while they go in the same direction. But at some point, it's inevitable that their paths will stop converging. In other words, they're going to go in different directions. What happens to you in the center? These two horses veer off from each other. What happens to you in the center? Can you envision that for yourself? You're split in half. You land on your ass. It's not safe. It's not good for you. And it's not helpful to you. It's natural and normal for a patient or client to form an attachment to their therapist. It's called transference. It's supposed to happen over the course of time as you start to build a trusted alliance with that therapist you are seeing for help. But some people with attachment issues, like borderlines, tend to lean toward this buckshot method, what I call in my article on the borderline male surviving the crash after your crush, the buckshot method of therapy. They figure if they shoot out some buckshot, they're bound to hit their target somehow. If I just expose myself to all this therapeutic support from various people, one of those sources is bound to help me. Doesn't work. And what it really signifies is an attachment issue. You don't want to be a person like this who does this kind of thing, doesn't want to be dependent on one source of help. they don't want to rely on one person. It's too scary for them. So that's sort of the subtext of this kind of issue. So this keeps them from attaching to any one person, relying on any one person, coming to trust any one person for help. Don't do this to yourself. It's confusing because you're going to reach a point inevitably where one therapist is saying one thing to you and giving you advice, and the other one is giving you the opposite advice. Who are you going to trust? Who are you going to trust, for fuck's sake? So this is never, ever, ever, ever a good idea. When a client would call me, if I knew they'd been in treatment, I would have maybe one consultation session with them to give them a taste of how I worked, which is radically different from what they were already getting. I mean, antithetical to psychotherapy and radically different to what they were getting in their therapist's office. I gave them a little taste, but I told them flat out, if you decide to work with me, if this is something you think you want to pursue, you've got to cut the cord with that other therapist. Tell them, hey, I'm going on a hiatus for a while. I'm going to try something different. I hope that your door will be open to me if I ever choose to return. Something like that. But I'd never work with somebody. Didn't feel ethical to work with somebody who was already in treatment with another therapist. You know, it's the wrong thing to do. It's confusing for the client. It keeps the pain alive. Well, why would anyone want to do that to somebody that was paying them money to get well? Now, I've been guilty of this to some extent, not in a therapeutic context, but there were a couple of different times in my life where I had two lovers I was seeing at the same time. And in each instance, they knew about each other. I'm not a deceitful person. I said, here's the deal. If you want to stay on board, I'm interested in this other person too. So, you know, that's a situation. And if you want to stay on board with me, then you're going to have to find a place of acceptance about this. But in both cases, one was when I was around 40, and the other was around my mid-40s. I was riding two horses, so to speak. But I wasn't necessarily looking for love at the time. And in both instances, those two men almost met the needs I had for a complete relationship, but they weren't really full relationship material, either one, in both instances. So that's what I needed to get my needs met at the time. I'm not ashamed of it. I was on the up and up with these guys. And if they signed on for the deal, that was on them. There's a lot of competition going on. At one point, my place looked like a funeral fucking parlor. I mean, each guy was trying to outdo the other with flowers and plants every week. It was pretty funny. But when it comes to therapeutic support, you want to make sure the person that you're seeing for help can absolutely help you get well. And I'm not talking about months and years and decades. I'm talking about assess every 3 to 6 months. How far am I coming? What kind of progress am I making with this person? Are they helping me become more aware of my own shit and helping me dismantle my shit? I mean, you really want to be checking in with yourself about this. A lot of people get into therapy, they go for psychotherapy, they hope, well, one day I'll get well. If I just keep going and going and going, one day I'll get well. Yeah. So decades later, they're sort of still in that groove. I never believed in that. I believed in getting people well as quickly as possible, in many instances under a year's time. And I worked with some pretty broken individuals, pretty messed up, broken individuals, and a lot of borderlines, both male and female. So if you want to take a look at my borderline male article, Surviving the Crash After Your Crush, I'm actually working on turning that into a book that I'm going to be publishing, that article on borderline males. And I think it's under the Prince of Tides subsection where I talk about the borderline male in treatment and this buckshot method of having 2 or 3 or 4 people in your life that are lending you support therapeutically. It's the buckshot method. It's a phrase that I have coined to describe that kind of desperate seeking of help, which really undermines a client. So if you're doing this stuff, wake up, smell the coffee. It ain't good for you. It's just not. If none of the therapists that you're seeing are adequate enough and skilled enough and gifted enough to get you well, to really start to change your paradigm, find yourself another therapist. In context of therapeutic help, it's not about quantity, it's about quality. Okay? Doesn't matter how much therapy you get. If you're not getting it from the right person who's able to make a dent in your dysfunction, you're not helping yourself. You're paying a lot of money for what? Okay, climbing down off my soapbox today, but hopefully this will be helpful for some of you, or it might help you look at a friend or a partner in a different way than you have been, who's using the buckshot method of therapy. It doesn't serve you. It doesn't serve the client in any way. It really does not. Oh, they think it does, but it doesn't. And again, it's unethical on the part of a therapist to allow somebody to come into their practice who's already in treatment with somebody else and maintain that situation. It just never works out well. Thanks for listening, and bye for now.